Roll Tide, everybody. Welcome to a live show today, right after the press conference. And Alabama starting to focus on a huge matchup at home against Wisconsin. We're going to get into that on the show today. We're brought to you by our friends over at Pearl River Resort. Let me remind you of the gang in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. Had you gone and said, hey, I'm going to take Bama, give up the 36 and a half, you'd have had a really good Saturday. Just like Alabama. They won 73-0. Second half would have been a breeze. Nothing to worry about, right? But you can do that. The Timeout Sports Lounge does college, does pro, all that stuff. And it's a short drive from Tuscaloosa. All right, let's get into the press conference, Alabama's win over Louisiana-Monroe, and more right here on Cover Crimson. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. We talked to you guys right after the game on Saturday, and we're doing it again today. Clint, good to see you. Your thoughts now that you've had a couple of days to process Alabama's 73-0 win?
Good game, as good as you could have possibly asked. I mean, you go back and watch the tape, and I don't think everything was perfect. You know, it was not a flawless performance, but given how they looked in week one, the energy, the effort, playing good football, winning football on both sides. I thought the game plan was solid. I thought Ryan Grubb had a great feel on offense. The confidence was there where it needed to be, like Todd Simpson, confident. Guys like Dijon Lee coming in, rotating in, seemed to have some confidence. Justin Jefferson playing a lot more confident, getting downhill, making some plays just across the board. I thought they did some really good things. And I think, you're playing multiple freshmen, starting multiple freshmen, and you're rotating a lot of guys in. And I just think that, these guys are going to create competition, and it's not necessarily through necessity. Like a guy like Lazier Brooks, if he ends up getting into the mix and kind of being a permanent mainstay in Alabama's wide receiver rotation, which I kind of think he already is, but if he continues to do that, then, I don't think it's because Alabama has to have him. They didn't have to have him start with Ron Williams out. You had a lot of veteran players, good players who could have stepped up and made that happen, but it is because of his play and how he's performing that he's now in the conversation to be a massive part of the rotation. I won't say he's going to be a starter when Ron Williams returns, but he's going to be a big part of the rotation and what Alabama wants to do offensively. You look at like Michael Carroll at right tackle. No, I don't think Will Conformi is playing great football right now. That is, I'm sure, playing a part. That's more necessity, in my opinion. But I also think that it's Michael Carroll just doing some really good things, that the coaching staff is like that nastiness, that toughness that he plays with. We want to see that on the field. We want to see other teams kind of pay for that nastiness and how he likes to play rather than just our guys in practice. And I thought he did some good things as well. So that should make both he and Will Conformi better. That competition, a lot of other places, same thing. But I'm feeling good about where this Alabama team is at relative to a week ago. The problem is that, they're 20.5-point favorites against Wisconsin. They were 22.5-point favorites against Vanderbilt. They were 16.5-point favorites against Michigan, 14.5 against Oklahoma, and 13.5 against Florida State in the season opener. And they lost all those games. Now, all of those were away from Bryant-Denny Stadium. But my point in saying that is to say, these spreads, they don't always mean anything. So you got to ignore that. Put your head down. People are going to be singing your praises more, rightfully so, after a very good performance. But you've got to continue to go to work, because this is a blimp on the radar, to be honest with you.
Yeah, a couple things. I have heard nothing but great things about Lazier Brooks. Now I've seen it. I love Ryan Williams, but he doesn't own that starting job. It's not his. It's the team's. And he hasn't caught the ball lately. He's looked really kind of nervous in the slot. Brooks reminded me of watching Waddle, Ruggs, Judy, and Smitty. I saw it. Crisp running, great hands, looking downfield, confident. I want this guy in the starting lineup. And if Ryan Williams wants to be in the starting lineup, he needs to earn his way back in. You know, Wally Pipp lost his job to Lou Gehrig because he got hurt. That's how sports work. I just can't imagine this guy sitting on the bench. I just can't. He's too good. And he's exciting, and he's exactly the type of playmaker that Alabama needs in that position. Besides that, Ryan Williams is really good on the outside, going up and getting balls like he did against Georgia and Oklahoma. It might be a challenge for Ryan Grubb and, Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer to get both of these guys on the field at the same time, but they're going to have to. Rico Scott needs to be playing. Jeremy Bernard is by far the best wide receiver, and there's some really good, talented guys there. The competition level has to be really high. That's how you win. And if somebody else steps up and plays like that, hey, I just can't imagine putting that guy back to the bench. All we've heard about, and then he does it in the game. Okay. Now, I know the competition level wasn't anything like it was at Florida State, but, we'll ramp it up this week. Now, not to say I'm not pulling for Hollywood. I am. I love them. But that's the way life works. You're going to have to go out there now, and you're going to have to bring your game back up and exceed what you were doing before to get back on the field. That's competition, and that's what I've said since the beginning. I love it when Alabama has competition because it's going to make everyone better. My thoughts on the game, I thought they played a perfect game. Loved it. They needed that, but it's Louisiana-Monroe. And that's saying that you're talking about a bottom feeder. You're talking about a scrimmage game. Now you got to take what you did, because it doesn't matter. You play a faceless opponent at Alabama and apply that to the next game. Don't think about Georgia. Don't think about what's going to be on the off week. Don't think about what you did last week. You got to focus on Wisconsin and stay focused on doing all the things that you did last game, including watching Ty Simpson. And that's a good transition right here, talking about Ty Simpson's performance. Now, I want to tell you guys this, though, that we are brought to you by Residence Inn by Marriott, Ocean City. Our guy Keith up there is from Decatur, holding it down on the shore, hun. But you're talking about great seafood, awesome sunsets, beautiful place, back-to-back coastal style hotel of the year. So when you're making your next vacation plan, hey, check it out. Christmas is amazing out there on the OC coast. The boardwalk, Secrets Bar, just a really fun place. The guys, you love it, and I'm telling you, I can't wait to go out there myself. All right, quarterbacks dominated 17-17 for Ty Simpson. Crazy how good and accurate he was.
We'll get to Ty in a second, because I do want to go. It's reading the comments. Mick, I think you hit on something that a lot of people are feeling. I've seen it on Twitter. We're obviously seeing it in the comments, and that is Ryan Williams should not be guaranteed anything coming back. I am not saying that he should be guaranteed anything, but I will ask that people exercise caution, because it was one game, a very poor game. Everybody played poorly. It's just his was highlighted more. He's playing in the slot. I don't think he's super comfortable in there, and he has always had a drop problem. That is kind of, there for a while, Julio would have the occasional drop. Would he have 3 in a game? Don't ever recall that. That's pretty extreme. But when you're talking about everybody having bad days, his good days might include 1 or 2 drops. So, of course, it would have to exceed that to be considered a bad day for Ryan Williams. But what I will say is that what he provides from a talent standpoint, as far as clearing things out and taking attention away from others, I think is underrated in the offense. I think that, something that I with Latsier Brooks' performance on Saturday, I think he's got to be a part of your rotation. I don't think it needs to be 6 or 7 guys. I think right now you got 5 guys that you probably need to have out there. I think it needs to be Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton. You need to have Rico Scott out there, and then I think that 5th guy's got to be Latsier Brooks. Like right now, Jalen Hale, he's working his way back from an injury. Don't know kind of where he's at. Cole Adams, good player, but relative to some of the others might not be as dynamic, but great punt returner. Give him credit for that. great return man in general. Jalen Mbakwe is still adjusting to playing wide receiver. Derek Meadows is he's a young player who has some ability, but with Williams struggling in the slot, I understand, like, if you think about Isaiah Horton, he's a true outside guy. And Jimmy and I recorded an episode earlier, and I discussed this, so it might be repetitive, and I apologize. But Isaiah Horton, he's like a true X. You can play him at the Z, but he's kind of a big-bodied X receiver. Jeremy Bernard, don't do anything with him. Keep him doing what he's doing because he is thriving in that role. And that is that Z move receiver lined up off the line of scrimmage, going in motion, doing that stuff. Continue to do that with him. Well, that makes him an outside guy, though. So if you got your two outside guys and Ryan Williams is in the starting lineup, where does Ryan Williams go? Well, he goes in the slot, and he's capable. I don't think he's comfortable in there, though. At least not full time. Maybe you can move him around and do different things. But with Latsier Brooks' emergence, I think his talent helped him get on the field and get the start over a Rico Scott or some of these other guys. But I think him being a pure slot also helped him get into the starting lineup. It made sense based off of Horton, based off of Jeremy. We need a slot with Ryan Williams out, and this guy's doing some great things and fits right into that mix. The way I would do it, and this is what I talked about last night on Twitter, is when Horton is on the field and Ryan Williams, like, Bernard's not coming off the field. It's just not happening. That guy's going to pretty much play every snap that he possibly can. Ryan Williams, right now, guys, until I see more, I'm going to assume a fully healthy Ryan Williams is going to continue to be one of those guys that pretty much is playing most snaps. But how I would do it is I would have him, when Horton's on the field, Ryan Williams in the slot. When Latsier Brooks, who, Rico's going to be a guy who rotates in as well, be a huge part of that. I'm not ignoring him, I promise. But just for this specific what we're talking about, because Latsier did get the start over him, and I think that matters. But to get Ryan Williams more opportunities on the outside, he is used to playing the X. So maybe Horton goes to the bench, catches a breather. You bring on Latsier Brooks, you move Ryan Williams to the X, and you have Latsier in the slot. So now you got Ryan, you got Jeremy at the Z, and you've got Brooks. I think that is a good combination of players as well. Now, they covet that size and length that a guy like Isaiah Horton brings to the table. So he's definitely going to continue to be a massive part of the offense. So I wouldn't even say that, like, Latsier might end up starting at the expense of an Isaiah Horton. I still think Horton's going to be the main guy because he provides that complementary size piece. But I think that is where you kind of can put everything together, get a good rotation going, and then Rico, he can come in some in the slot, he can play the X, mainly probably going to be a Z, but with Jeremy Bernard playing so much, you're going to have to play him at the X and the H a little bit more. So it's a good combination to have. And then with Horton not being 100%, I think that is where you saw Derek Meadows bring that size element against Florida State. Like, he was closer to 100% this past weekend compared to week one, and you didn't see Derek Meadows as much in meaningful snaps. In fact, I don't even think he got any meaningful snaps. But if you continue to have that size element, if Horton ends up being banged up or has to miss time for whatever reason at any point this season, I could see Meadows not being a part of the five-man rotation. But if they need to add that element back in to have the size, I think Meadows would be capable of doing that. So that's how I would do it. But I understand people are frustrated with Ryan Williams. It makes sense. Didn't last season, things definitely fell off. He was 17 years old. He's only 18 years old right now. And, he brings a dynamic game-breaking ability that just few players have. It is wild how he was widely considered one of the best players in college football. He plays one game, a not good game, in which everybody played poorly, and now people are wanting him to go to the bench. I understand he's got the things that people don't like, carrying the stuffed animal in. Totally get that. That's foreign to a lot of us, including me. But I would exercise caution as far as jumping off of the Ryan Williams train, because this is still a guy who not only provides game-breaking ability, but what he can do as far as creating for others as well. I think that is a very underrated element of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not saying he can't play. And I think what a lot of people are just saying is, and this is a good post right here, that it's the outside distractions, buckle down and earn your money. He's probably the highest paid guy on the team. He's a superstar in the making, but you got to look like a superstar. You know, now they're right. These aren't amateurs anymore. I used to really have caution calling guys out because they didn't get paid. Now they're getting paid, you know, like when I see, you know, you're paying the money that you're paying for Jalen Mbakwe to sit on the bench and I don't have anybody that can rush the passer. You know what? I got a problem with that, you know, and it's not that I don't like Bach. It's just that, look, we got to have people that can get to the quarterback. Like the resources need to go there, you know, and you get criticized, but I hope that Ryan Williams comes back and is the guy that we saw at the beginning of last year. And look, the minute you forget about how good he is, oh, then all of a sudden that he can do a lot of damage out there. And Ty Simpson getting him the ball is what it's all about. 17-17 in the game for Simpson. I thought Austin Mack looked pretty good. And then Keelan Russell got me excited. Just watching him, and I'm going, man, you put him with Brooks. You got Riley running the ball. Man, it's a fun young group. AK Deer.
Mick, I don't know if it's not easy going 17-17 in practice against Ayer. You know, that's how impressive going 17 for 17 is. And there was a couple that was brought back. You know, his escaping, rolling out to the left, turning his shoulders around and flipping a ball 55, 60 yards through the air to Jeremy Bernard for a touchdown that was called back. First of all, stupid good throw. Stupid good. I mean, like, I mean, that was just watching that back. You knew it was incredible when you saw it in real time, but just the circumstances, I mean, his ability to flip and get himself in a position where he could launch that thing up, incredible job. And he made some really high quality throws. And that's what excites me, is that I don't care who you're going against. Some of the throws that he made are jaw dropping, and just his ability to do it. If he did it, like I said, against Ayer, I would be impressed. And the fact that he's doing it while there are guys chasing after him and he is under duress to some extent, like, that was impressive to me. Austin Mack, and this is something that Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb kind of brought up. They mentioned Austin Mack playing in the second quarter. They said, you know, it was pointed out that Jake Hayner at Fresno State, he went through something similar where the coaching staff said, we're going to try to get this guy involved and get him, you know, a little bit of action with the first team. I was looking at it more so of, this was smart by the coaching staff because of the inexperience in that room. You got Austin Mack reps with the first team in meaningful action in the first half. That can be beneficial down the road, because if anything happens to Ty Simpson, whether it's struggling, whether it's injury, whatever, if you have to go to Austin Mack, and if it is an injury and like Ty Simpson's not an option that you can go back to, you at that point you would have Austin Mack, who has no experience whatsoever in meaningful action, at least not before Saturday. But then Keelan Russell is a true freshman who also has no meaningful experience. So you would very quickly find yourself in a situation where it can get dangerous, and you've got talent in that room, but they're, you know, DJ Lagway type of thing, where his confidence can kind of get shook a little bit because he's pushed out there before he's ready, and he hadn't had many opportunities to get any of that game experience. So I thought that was kind of smart on their part, and it also gave, you know, Keelan Russell enough time to get in and get a full quarter of action, and they didn't bring him out there to turn around and hand the football off. There's a reason they scored 73 points, and they scored 21 of those points in the fourth quarter, because they were allowing these quarterbacks to continue to throw the football around, operate the offense as if they were the starter, and that is what I would call beneficial experience. It's not just getting on the field to do nothing. It's getting out there and actually getting some live game reps that you would see in a regular game. That I feel like was beneficial. But come to find out, in this press conference that they had on Monday, they also pointed out part of that was maybe to provide a little bit of a spark for Ty, because a lot of people wanted to give Ty a pass after Florida State. And I said he did some really good things, and there wasn't a whole lot going right around him. But he was not without fault in that game. He had his own issues passing open players to go to, you know, progressions that were working their way down the field that were, you know, there was some of the things that he was having trouble with. There's no reason to have trouble with it. And granted, young player, you would fully expect him to continue to build on that. But the coaching staff looked at that and thought, this can't continue to be an issue. And so this was decided with it. Not only it gets Austin Mack some key experience, but it also, from their perspective, hopefully it lights a fire under Ty, which it seems to have. And so it's beneficial. But that's something that a lot of people just want to say nothing. Ty was totally fine against Florida State. That is not true, Mick.
Yeah. Look, I love the competition, man. I'm saying it
I
about,
do too.
about any position, that it's going to make you better to know that there's somebody out there that can jump into your same spot. One of the guys who had to deal with competition like that was Jay Coker. He's also a spokesman for Pearl River.
I may not suit up on Saturdays anymore, but I'm still in the game.
Let's roll.
In here, I call the plays, make adjustments, and lay it on the line. Want to feel that fire, that rush? Then you've got to get in the game. I used to say it in the tunnel, and I still say it now. Let's roll.
Let's roll.
All right, there he is, the star himself, Mr. Jay Coker. But anyway, look, we appreciate Pearl River for being a part of what we do here on a daily basis. All right, so we heard from the coaches today. DeBoer, Grubb, and Wommack, head coach, offensive and defensive coordinators, your takeaway from those press conferences. And we'll be breaking these down all week, but just your initial thoughts for what those guys had to say.
Well, first of all, speaking of competition and them just getting guys on the field, like Michael Carroll is pushing Wilkin Formby right now.
Good.
And that is noteworthy. That's good because one thing, if Michael Carroll ends up winning and Wilkin Formby loses out eventually on that battle, you've got a guy who started, 4 games and played 300, between 350 and 400 snaps in his career as a backup at tackle. That would really shore up that spot. But Carroll he brings a nastiness to the table. He loves being physical. And I think that this coaching staff sees the benefit of that. But that is something that I think when you talk about like Latsier Brooks pushing for time, that's kind of not surprising. Austin Mack coming into the second quarter and maybe quote unquote pushing Ty Simpson. That is definitely a shock. London Simmons is pressed into a starting job due to injury, but he performed pretty well. But the one that is like, this guy's kind of forcing his way onto the field and people need to be recognizing that. And that is Michael Carroll. He has been exactly what the coaching staff was hoping that he would be as a 5-star recruit who everything that got put on tape. When there's a competitive spirit about that guy that I think is very infectious. And when you watched him get beat in those rival camps, he would jaw at people, he'd get into it with people. That is a guy who plays through the whistle. You never want to purposefully injure somebody, but he seems like a player that wants to hurt people. He wants someone to get up off of the ground and feel his presence after he just buried them. And I love guys like that. And coaching staffs loves players like that. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, Kane Wommack, his demeanor. This was a game where 0 points, a lot went right. Some guys performed well, but if you go back and watch the film, it was not a perfect performance on defense. It's just Louisiana-Monroe didn't really always have the ability to exploit the opportunities that were presented. I liked because I was wondering after watching that, I was like, I wonder how Wommack will we buy into the hype, and the excitement. He came in, he's like, we like what they did, but it's not good enough. Like we got it, and that made me feel better. It's like, okay, you see the problems. It's not just the results on the scoreboard or on the stat sheet. You know that there are issues that are there. Are you working to continue to correct them? That was encouraging. But one of the big concerns that fans had exiting this game, really, it was last year, it was the first game, and now it was after Louisiana-Monroe. That's the pass rush. Where's the pass rush? Can we get guys on the ground? We got some guys who can pressure the quarterback. Can you sack the quarterback? I've said since Kane Wommack became the defensive coordinator, it is not a defense that's going to rack up sacks. It is pressure to turnover rather than pressure to sack. But at the same time, there needs to be more of a sack element to this defense than there has been to the first 15 games of the Kalen DeBoer, Kane Wommack era. So he acknowledges that there's a big concern like LT Overton, for whatever reason, he cannot get guys on the ground. Had the problem last year, continues to have it this year. Love him to death. Think he's still a very disruptive player. Hopefully that gets fixed, but they got to figure out a way to create more sacks on quarterbacks because You talk about those turnovers. That's a great way to force them. And you can rattle quarterbacks. It has not lived up to the standard thus far.
Yeah. And I think that's the worry I have moving forward is just, their ability to get back there and pressure the quarterback. Now, I'm going to tell you what the secret is, that they're going to have to just get going on offense quick, because if you limit, if you're ahead and they have to become one-dimensional, even if you don't get a great pass rush, I think the secondary is good enough to make some plays. Some bad things will happen for other teams if they got to throw every play. And I feel like we've spent a lot of our NIL monies on offense. Like we're supposed to be great on offense. And we saw that this past game. That's got to continue against good teams. But for this thing to work, I think it's almost set up for a team we want them to try to throw on our secondary, right? Because we got so many really good players there. The pass rush doesn't really excite me right now, and I've said that before the season. And that goes back to last year. But I'll tell you what does is watching those wide receivers run around and catch passes, and watching those running backs, watching Kevin Riley basically set the tone for everybody. I'm the fifth string guy. Now I'm starting. Well, hey, either you step up or somebody else is going to pass you. It goes back to the competition. But plus he gets it, being a Tuscaloosa guy that probably dreamed about playing at Alabama, went to games his whole life, right there in the heart of Titletown, so I just feel like, to me, Clint, the formula for success for this team starts with offense. That's what they did at Washington. And then, maybe you make a couple plays here and there, but the days of Coach Saban's defense and, limiting teams to no rush yards and, you know what I mean? Like, the only team that beats us is the running quarterback that has their best game of their life. I just don't see that anymore. I just think it's just kind of a different setup.
Well, one thing that I would do right now, you watch Mississippi State, and they're very multiple like Alabama. You're going to see 4-man fronts. You're going to see 3-man fronts, and those 3-man fronts are going to look different. Those 4-man fronts are going to look different with some different personnel and things like that. What I like that they do is when they go with that kind of 3-3-5 look, it is a true 3-3-5 look. So they take their jack linebacker, they take him off the football, and they play him as a Mike. He's stacked behind the nose. And his responsibility on passing plays is to essentially be that fourth defensive lineman, but you're not applying immediate pressure. You're not rushing the quarterback, at the snap. You were spying the quarterback. If you can have enough of those, you're only going to have 3 guys rushing in that instance, and everybody seems to not want 3 guys rushing. But what you can do in that instance, if you can create enough disruption in the pocket, you got a James Smith who can wreak some havoc. You got Tim Keenan, not a dynamic pass rusher, but maybe a pocket collapser. If you can force quarterbacks out of the pocket and you are anticipating that, now whoever that cat is that's playing that jack or, the wolf position or whatever, where he's playing that Mike and he's playing the spy, he's got to be an open field tackler. This is where a guy like Xavier Griffin, I think, is really going to be beneficial, because he is going to probably play off the ball, but he has ball hawking ability, sideline to sideline speed. He can close space and hurry, and he's got a pass rushing mentality as a, kind of Jahad Campbell type of player. If you can have that player being your spy and then flush quarterbacks from the pocket, and you can immediately apply pressure that way, not only have you applied pressure in the pocket, but you've got a guy who's immediately applying pressure whenever he breaks, and it constantly keeps quarterbacks under duress, and maybe you can start to generate some sacks. I'm not saying that's the only thing they need to do. I'm saying I would like to see that be kind of a little bit more of a variety added into what they do. Is that type of thing. But when you talk about this defense, it has the elements of a great defense. It's just the sacks have to be there a little bit more. The turnovers are great. They had a bunch of tackles for loss. They were living in the backfield. Yeah. It's just, those sacks. I mean, you can create a strip sack. You can, get a quarterback rattle where maybe you get a turnover or two that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But if he just gets smacked in the mouth, he remembers that he's thinking about the pass rush. You want that quarterback thinking about that pass rush as much as you possibly can. And right now, I just don't think Alabama is doing enough to, create that in the back of quarterback's mind. So I would like to see them continue to improve on it.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to go through a couple of these right here. Verdicts out on Kane's defense. Yeah, I mean, or the verdict's not out, right? Let's see what happens. I've talked to some guys that played in the NFL, played at Alabama, that don't believe in this system at all. But you know what? He goes out there and it starts to work. I don't think anybody's got a problem with it. I just think that when you watch Bama get run over like they did against Florida State and Oklahoma and Michigan, you worry about it. Now, I will say this, there was just an added energy. I saw a lot of you guys putting in there about Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. I thought he was just exactly what Alabama needed. I thought it was bull crap that they kicked him out of the game. The hit that Brian Williams got from Florida State to me was from Earl Little Jr. was a cheap shot, and that's just my opinion. I just thought that Dre Kirkpatrick was just out there playing football, and each week you get a different set of officials that get to decide what they think is this or what they think is that. But watching him go out there and play like his pants were on fire was exactly what we needed. His dad was probably like, look, man, you to play at Alabama, you got to bring the level up, because his dad did it. And you know what? He did it. I thought he stood out to me. And Jake Coker was talking to me on Friday, and he's like talking about Earl Little Jr. and how he played against us for Florida State and played downhill and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I saw that too. And it was good to see one of our guys kind of step it up. I thought the defense played really inspired, but I thought he was definitely a notch above. But he's going to be out for the first half of the Wisconsin game because of the targeting.
Well, and that's a great point. And we had heard great things about him all throughout the offseason. I think it's a combination of factors. I think the fact that he has grown up around the Alabama standard. Dre learned that from Nick Saban, and that was kind of the entire point of it. It was supposed to make you successful on the football field, but it was also supposed to make you successful in life. And really a lot of the principles you can apply to the rest of your life. I don't know Dre Sr., but I can tell by the way his son plays. I can tell by the way he played that, I wouldn't be shocked at all if a lot of those principles he's applied to a lot of other aspects of his life. And, so that's a guy who understands what it takes. And it can be infectious. I mean, I loved playing with guys like that. It is very hard to not have energy around that type of player, because you're watching him play and you see the crowd is feeding off of it. They love it. The big hits, forcing some turnovers. Yes, he gets thrown out of the game, but I mean, he is setting the tone out there, and you want to be lollygagging, playing next to that guy. No, I mean, it's tough. That's why it's infectious. So, hell, I mean, if the offense is dealing with anything like it was at times against Florida State, put Dre in on offense. I don't care where you put him. Just let him go smack somebody. Maybe it can give some energy. But, this is a 3-star recruit. So I think there's a chip on his shoulder. I think he was, I say, coached the right way. He was raised the right way, in my opinion. From a bare minimum of a football standpoint, I'm not going to sit. I don't know the Kirkpatrick, so I can't say anything about that. But I think that it is set up for him to have a successful mentality, and he's got enough talent. Are there some limitations physically? Is he the fastest player on the field? No, even though I think he's got fine speed. Is he the biggest player from a length standpoint? No, he certainly didn't get his dad's length. But that cat plays hard all the time, and I think that Alabama would certainly benefit from a little bit more of that and some more players playing like that. I mean, he's not the only one, but he certainly is the most notable, because a lot of his stuff, there were some plays that he made that he really had no business making, but it was pure effort as to why he made it. So I love people like that, Mick.
Yep. Great to see Stacy hanging out with us today. One of our buddies. Missed tackles are bothering me. I believe there was 14 against ULM. I worry about that too. Florida State missed tackles, Oklahoma missed tackles, Michigan missed tackles, even some games that we won like that, missed tackles, and we still shut them out, so shows you kind of what happened in the football game. But how do they get better at the missed tackles? I think the thing you do is you gang tackle, and that's what they did well in that game. Don't just sit there and wait for somebody else to do it. You jump in there and help out.
Well, yeah, and this is a problem. Like, I think Bray continued to struggle with tackling. He was running around a lot. I mean, he was playing with his hair on fire a lot more, but I still think he's struggling as far as getting guys to the ground. And I think that they're not doing a good enough job of closing space. Now, Kane Wommack mentioned this, but I think they're breaking down, trying to make sure that they secure a tackle, but they're not closing enough space before they do that. And it's allowing other offensive players to kind of take the fight to them a little bit. But B, sometimes you're not closing enough space before you do that, and then they're able to make you miss. You've got to put pressure on these guys and be on them to a point where it's a lot more difficult to make these moves. And you got to have guys who are rallying to the football as well. Because one of the things, there was one play in particular where the guy missed a tackle, but there were two players. I think Dijon Lee ended up being the one. He came flying down and made a pretty big hit, if I'm not mistaken. And there was another player there as well. But like, that's the type of thing where, yeah, he ended up picking 2 or 3 extra yards. Now it was supposed to be a tackle for loss. Ended up being, getting them close to the line of scrimmage. But it's one of those where, okay, but at least it's not a positive gain for the offense. If you're going to miss tackles, that's, I guess, how you want to miss them. I just don't think that they're doing a consistent enough job right now of getting guys to the ground. And that is whether it be sacks or at times, whether that be just, securing tackles and stuff after the catch, maybe on a run or whatever. And, a team like Louisiana-Monroe, they're not going to exploit that. Other teams are capable, though. And so, that's going to be something to monitor moving forward, because the more that happens, the more that a guy will break multiple tackles. That will get the crowd into it. If you're in Athens, Georgia, and 2 or 3 guys miss a tackle and they were supposed to be a tackle for loss, and he ends up picking up 9 or 10 yards, and that crowd really starts feeding off of it, and they're working hard and trying hard to make plays, that can really set up the momentum for the opposing team. So they got to be better about that for sure. You're going to miss a tackle every once in a while. That's part of it, especially when you're playing aggressive and fast, but I think it's at a little bit too high of a rate right now.
I hear you guys. Say Roll Tide with a thumbs up, and never forget that if you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always watch us on the Cover Crimson Podcast Network, and that's Spotify, Apple, all those places you get your podcasts. This will be on there where we're talking about Alabama. We'll be back on later this week, tomorrow, as a matter of fact, and then Jimmy and Clint tonight. So we got some shows lined up for you. And we just appreciate you guys being a part of everything here and talking to us and the comments and all that. It's been a total fun. Now, this week, we got a kickoff, 11 a.m. on Saturday against Wisconsin. It's going to be a lot of fun. Big matchup. For any of you guys that are going to Tuscaloosa, let me remind you that we'll have the tailgate show at Innisfree on Friday from 1 to 3. So swing by and see us at the Free. Actually, Coker's not going to be there this week. It's going to be Baron Huber's going to be there, and I'm working on someone else that played in Alabama. So we'll
I love we'll love the hyping us up a little bit, getting a little something to think about.
We'll see. The offer's out there. We'll see. He's going to let me know. Anyway, Clint, any final thoughts?
No, just appreciate everybody being here. Once again, man, I feel better about this team than I did on Monday of last week. I think it's impossible for you not to feel a little bit better. I just don't think it's as drastic as, some people are going to make it out to be. I still have my concerns. There's still things they need to fix. And, one thing that a lot of this stuff I said on the show with Jimmy, so I apologize if it's repetitive, but, was it Mike Tyson that made the comment one time? Everybody's got a plan until someone hits you in the mouth. Alabama didn't get hit in the mouth by Louisiana-Monroe. So I want to see, and will Wisconsin? Maybe. Defensively, they certainly can. Offensively, I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but, it's a Power 4 team. I guarantee you, based off of last year losing to Alabama like Georgia did, Kalen DeBoer's first year as head coach, they're going to have that game circled. It's going to be in Athens. They're going to have a home field advantage, and they're going to hit Alabama in the mouth. And what I really am anxious to see is, how do you respond? Because if they respond like they did against Florida State, they will lay down and it will be an absolute bloodbath. But they don't have to lay down. They can respond. So I'm hoping to see that. But guys, with some of this stuff, like that type of not being able to respond, that's something that you're not going to learn about yourself if you've improved on it against Louisiana-Monroe. So until I see them against Georgia, there's, or maybe Wisconsin this weekend, I'm still in a wait and see mode.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, guys. I'll tell you what I want to see is you looking good for the game. And you can do that by using Crimson 20. That is our rowback.com 20% off code for all their Alabama gear, or really any gear that they have there. So take advantage of that. Rowback.com Crimson 20 and get 20% off polos, pullovers. They got a bunch of really cool Bama gear, and we appreciate them for being a part of this. And we will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Again, brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Let's watch Coke.
I may not suit up on Saturdays anymore, but I'm still in the game.
Let's roll.
In here, I call the plays, make adjustments, and lay it on the line. Want to feel that fire, that rush? Then you've got to get in the game. I used to say it in the tunnel, and I still say it now. Let's roll.